Let's get started. Hey, everybody. So, Python, let's talk about it. What we're going to cover in this lesson. First off, we're going to cover GitHub page, GitHub repository. Check it out. Link will be in the video notes. Under unsolved activities, you can download the notes from this video as well as activities to perform. And their solutions are, of course, in solved. Cool stuff. Yep, check that out. Let's dive right into it. So I'm gonna just do everything in idle. This is the shell, file new. I'm gonna put this off to the side. This will be your Python module or file, your .py file that you save. Things we're gonna cover today. We're gonna cover some pretty cool topics to make you deadly right away. Um, get some stuff done and maybe pique your interest a little more into what Python could do for you. So we're going to cover variables. We're going to talk about those briefly. We're going to do them live. We're going to do some printing to the standard output, which is to the console or screen. Pretty chill stuff. Save a file, and we'll see how it goes from there. Uh, let's dive into it. So Windows system started idle. I got 3.10.1. Up here you'll see the shell. This is kind of cool because variables are nothing more than a place in memory to store data. What type of data? Well, this is a string called Tim. You hit enter, var1's in there, right? And there's a command called type, extremely handy. It'll tell you what type of object you're dealing with. And the more that these videos progress, you're going to hear me talk more about object-oriented programming, how Python deals with objects, how to build your own objects. Um, it's over time, it's build on build. Don't be stressed. Take a deep breath. You got this. It's not that bad, right? It's built by humans for humans. So you get what you get, right? So var1 equals Tim, type of var1, because that's the name of my variable. It's kind of chintzy. But you see the class comes back, it's a string. So that means that this type of object is of the class string, which has some built-in methods and things you can manipulate with. We're going to dive deeper into that later on. Right now, I just want you to focus on what a variable is. It's nothing more than a place in memory. And here you could run the ID command on your variable is the argument that you feed the ID function. And here it tells you back where in memory you defined var1, which equals Tim. Not really handy now, but it's going to all come full circle eventually. So that's cool. You could also define an empty variable and call on it just in the shell by calling on its name. When you call on it, that means you're referencing it. So right now, when I type in variable2 var2 and hit enter, it references that name to memory and standard outputs back to screen what's in that memory space. And you see there's nothing in var2. var1, on the other hand, has Tim. Now, this is much different than going over here. Good practice, put a header, put some data up top, right? And when you define your variable, we'll say F name for first name, right? Equals, and we'll put Tim. And then we'll say print, open, close, which is called directly on our variable. Now, you see how this is untitled? I'm going to save it. Well, let's go to run it first. I'm going to say run the module. You can just hit F5 or select run module. It says, well, it must be saved. So that's cool, right? Now you notice it says you must save this file before you could run it. So click OK. Give it a place. I'll just throw it someplace fun. I'll just throw it on my desktop, whatever. It's always messy already. And I'll name this lesson 01. Hit enter. And it runs, and I get Tim back. Now I'm back in this window. I'm going to hit F5 again to run it again. And you see it pop up in the shell. Cool, right? Basically, I defined a variable in memory, a space, put the string Tim in there, printed my variable, which is Tim. Awesome. Now we could add to this. Print's kind of cool. It has a lot of functionality to it. We're going to dive deeper into that in another video. But just to get you started, this is my first name. It's really not my first name, but we could do this with a comma. Hit F5. And now out to standard output is, this is my first name. Well, what do I mean by standard output? Well, anything that Python currently runs this file. You could do it in command prompt. We'll do that later on in a Windows machine, in a command shell, Windows shell. You could do it in Bash on Linux. You could do it in all kinds of fun little locations. We'll cover those. But what I want you to focus on is when I come over to here and I grab this printf name. Now, fname was defined in this file, ran in this shell. Fname exists in memory. Could do an ID on this. It exists in memory. You could do a type of fname, and it comes back a string because that's a type of object that's sitting in that variable called fname. And then when you call on print, you can just call print fname, works as designed. Now, if I close this shell and reopened it, I'd lose fname because it closes the process for Python. It removes all the memory space for it, which your variable is sitting in the memory space for Python. That's something to keep in mind. We'll cover that too. But the cool thing with this is now that we're in this kind of funky shell and having a good time, you can get self-help, the best kind of help. Guess what the command is? Help. So if you wanted help on print, the print function, you hit help, parenthesis, your argument print, close parenthesis, hit enter, and it tells you all about how to use print. Well, not everything, but quite a bit. It tells you how to use it, print, open, close. It says print, put your value. There's also some stuff called separator and end. And the default of the file is to system standard output, which means basically hit your screen, and flush false. Prints the values to a stream or to standard output by default. Cool. So that's what print does. It prints to your standard output. Let's have some more fun. What other types of variables can you have? Well, before we go any further, let's talk about comments. Comments are awesome. They just start with a hashtag or an octothorpe. And here you could, best practice is a hashtag, a space, and then pound sign, number sign, octothorpe, whatever you want to call it. Right here, you can give it just a quick note. Now, good comments are the why. Don't put on the next line declaring a variable. You could tell by giving it a name, some type of name followed by a space and equal sign, that you're defining a variable. There's no need to explain that, right? Now, if you put Tim needs to be held in a var because, and then some reason, it's special or something, right? Some reason, the why. Doesn't have to be elaborate, but if there's no why, and if the code reads itself, don't put a comment. Cool thing with comments, you could put them before stuff, after stuff. And what I mean by after is this. Now, Python negates these. So it sees the hashtag or octothorpe followed by a string, and then it doesn't execute. I could hit Control S to save, F5 to run it, and now in the shell, you don't see any of my comments, you just see what I printed. Extremely handy, right? That's cool stuff. Well, let's change this up. Well, let's add something to it. So comment out a line, say if I didn't want to do fname, and I did that, and I did okay, and I changed the variable to age. I declared it age, space equals. Now I hit 12, and down here I put this is my first name. I'll put this as my age, and I'll just call on age. Hit save, hit F5. My age is 12. Cool. Now over here, if I do a type on age, the class is no longer a string, it's an integer. So what's an integer? That's a grown-up term for number. Now, it doesn't have a decimal place. Those are floats. We'll get to that. But the cool thing with this is Python knows out of the box what integers are. So you can perform mathematical functions. We'll get to those later. This is all cool, fine and dandy. So you got two different object types, of a string and an integer so far. If I just did a .5, I'm 12 and a half years old, hit save, hit F5. Now it says I'm 12 and a half. Now, if I do that same thing, hit the up arrow, now you notice that Python automatically knows it's a float type of object because it has something trailing the decimal. That's handy. Let's see what else is going on. So you got string, float, integer, print. Well, let's get some input. Now we could leave this variable right there. We could leave age. And there's a command called input. Let's get some self-help on that. Help, input. Okay, input. Let's see, it's prompts. Default's none. It reads a string from standard input. Cool. So we're going to use that. Age variable equals input, open, close, double quotes, because I'm wrapping a string inside of input. What is your age? Question mark /t. So the /t, the \t, just when I hit enter for input, it'll add a tab, make it look a little cleaner. You'll see what I mean here. I'm going to hit Control S to save it, hit F5. Over here it says, what is your age? My cursor is tabbed over. I'll say 36, I wish. Hit enter. And now 36 is stored in age. And when I print, this is my age, it prints, this is 36. Super cool. So what have we covered already? Well, what a variable is, the ID command, the help command, the print, we dipped our toes in print, the type command, covered a couple type of objects, and just some fun with variables, strings, integers, floats. There are other types, more complex object types, and we'll talk about those. We'll have plenty of time. But I think that's quite a bit to get started. So please check out the GitHub. Let's see, I'll pop that back up. And here there's some activities that have you fill in variables, rename variables, run some commands, and you can do a self-check with your solved. As I go ahead and run through these videos, I'll be updating this GitHub repository, this repo, with more and more activities and files to go with the accompanying videos. Once again, hit like, subscribe, let me know what's up, leave comments if you like it, don't like it. Too bad I'm always wearing this headset because I love it. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm dead serious. I do love this headset. But it just helps me focus, honestly. If you were asking me why I love this headset, it's because it helps me focus. But at the end of the day, we're going to keep traveling through Python. We're going to build on build and just remember to relax because you got this. And that's all I have for this lesson. Have fun.